Hi everyone, it's Simple Star. I'm here today to share with you information about the lunar eclipse, the Capricorn lunar eclipse that is coming up on July 16th, just a few days away. We are in the midst of this energy as I am recording this on Sunday, July 14th. And so this eclipse is, like I said, on Tuesday, July 16th. It's at 24 degrees of Capricorn, and it occurs approximately around 2:38 p.m. Pacific time. This is only a partial eclipse. It's not a full eclipse, and it is not visible in the United States. And so what happens? What is a lunar eclipse? We talked about a solar eclipse the last time I spoke. And just so you know, they come together. They're tied together in the same eclipse pattern. And the solar eclipse this year is conjunct the North Node, or let's put it this way, this July is conjunct the North Node, which is about the way forward. The lunar eclipse this year is conjunct the South Node. It's called a South Node lunar eclipse. And so it is about releasing and letting go. It shows us what we need to release and let go. And also what things we need to bring in from the past, maybe some gifts and teachings. So anyway, a lunar eclipse occurs when the shadow of the earth blocks the light of the sun. It comes between the sun and the moon because the moon has no light of her own. She only reflects the light of the sun. And so the shadow of the earth does not allow that to happen. And so what does this mean? What is the meaning of this for us? Well, first of all, let's talk about Capricorn. We've got a big complex conjunct this South Node in Capricorn. And by the way, all eclipses are within 18 degrees of the nodes of the moon. So the nodes of the moon play a very important role in eclipses. And so we have a Saturn, which rules Capricorn, Pluto, Moon in Capricorn. All of those three planets conjunct the South Node of the moon. And so Saturn and Capricorn are very closely aligned in their meaning in many ways. Saturn and Capricorn is about character building. It's about growing up. It's about being mature, about taking responsibility. Capricorn is the sign of the elder, and Saturn brings us teachings around personal authority. How do we claim our personal authority, and what does that mean? So that is the primary goal, the teaching. But in the process, Saturn is the planet of limitation. It shows us where we have limitations. And so it can bring up fear. It can bring up all the places where we feel separate and where we feel separate from source. And as it's bringing up fear, it brings up fear of those places where we feel separation and division, and rather than unity. And of course, we're seeing this right now so much in our political world. There is so much fear around those that are different from us, and fear separating us from each other. When the goal of the solar eclipse is about coming together, recognizing we are all family. And so this is what we're asked to be released as it comes into conscious awareness, how fear is driving a wedge between us to make us feel that we are separate from each other because we feel separate from source, separate from each other, separate from Mother Earth, separate from the animals. We are all related. It is, all my relations. The Mitakuye is the bigger umbrella teaching, but in the lunar eclipse, we're bringing into conscious awareness what we need to release, and it's coming in not only in our personal lives but in the collective. We can just see it everywhere. Saturn and Capricorn bring in judgment. Saturn is the judge. You can kind of relate him in some ways to Jehovah. He is a very powerful God, and he does pass judgment. And so it shows us where we judge ourselves, where we judge each other. And so this is what we're being asked to release on our trip to personal authority. Now, the moon is tightly conjunct the planet Pluto. And the moon is our heart. The moon represents it's our emotional body, and it's also where we carry our memories, and it's what lies in the unconscious. Well, being conjunct Pluto is the collective unconscious. It takes us even deeper into the unconscious of what is ours and what is the collective. And so it reminds me of the dark goddess, because Pluto really asks for deep authenticity and wants us to connect to our soul, and takes us to the places where we are disempowered and disconnected from the deepest parts of ourselves. And it wants to bring it into conscious awareness. And so it is a deep dive emotionally. It will take us deeply into those places where we hold that fear so that we can release it, and where we feel separate from source, Pluto and Capricorn especially. And Pluto is an energy that we have to feel. It's not one we can think our way through. So during this lunar eclipse, if you have planets anywhere, I'm going to say between 21 and 27 degrees of the cardinal signs of Capricorn, Cancer, Aries, and Libra, you may feel that this is a very emotional time for you. And we all may feel it, but people who have either planets or angles, you can have your ascendant, if your ascendant is there as well, in that 21 to 27 degrees of the cardinal signs. And so, yes, it is about a deep dive emotionally, and it's also where we hold trauma. I've just been reading, of course, we have this huge addiction problem here, opioid crisis. But what underlies this addiction is trauma. And the drugs that people use to numb themselves and to not feel. But the truth is, there is deep trauma underneath that, and we're all suffering from trauma on some level, most likely. We've all had childhood issues, some much worse than others. And just living in the world, we're living kind of in a state of constant PTSD. And so this trauma is wanting to come to awareness, to the light, so that it can be healed. There is a collective healing that is moving through us. So sometimes even what we're feeling is not just ours, but it is the collective wanting to heal and bring these. The other thing I want to say is, Capricorn is the sign most closely associated with the patriarchy. So these patriarchal wounds of power over, of might makes right, of hierarchical and treating people very poorly, and when Pluto was moving through Sagittarius, it came to light all of the pedophilia in the Catholic Church. And now, as Pluto is moving through Capricorn, and it's interesting that during this time of these eclipses, the Jeffrey Epstein scandal has come to light, of the pedophilia in the halls of power, in the halls of government. I mean, we know there's been a lot of, we know there's dark stuff. And I know I have heard about it, but it was hard to believe that it was true, that there were sex trafficking rings within our government, within different places. And this Jeffrey Epstein is he's connected to very powerful people in the world who were involved in this child sex trafficking scandal, or who were customers, put it that way. They weren't part, of him doing that. But they were participants in it. And this is coming to light, and more is because during an eclipse, and I didn't say that, but during an eclipse, things come to light that were hidden. And this is coming to light finally. And so, so there's some dark and heavy stuff. It reminds me of the dark goddess coming forward with her sword of truth, cutting through what is not true, what has been hidden, and aligns us. And as they say, when we can confront the truth, then we can start the healing process. Until when we live in denial, we can't really do the healing. And so Pluto and Capricorn conjunct the moon requires self-honesty to bring about emotional maturity, owning our stuff, and being able to call it what it is. And then that way we start the healing journey. Pluto is always about soul healing. And during this time as well, Mercury went retrograde on July 7th and is still retrograde. And when Mercury went retrograde on July 7th, and Mercury is the god of the mind, was in a square was conjunct Mars and in a square to Uranus. And Mars is trauma. Mars can bring trauma. Mars can bring violence. Mars is the warrior. But Mars is also where we set good boundaries, where we say no. And Uranus is like an earthquake and lightning and shakes things up. And so during this time, we've had some pretty serious earthquakes around the world, as well as, and I also want to say, Mercury and Uranus have to do with the weather. And when they're in a square together, that is a challenging aspect. So we can expect some pretty unstable weather, as well as what really came up for me, the analogy of shaking. The earth is shaking. And I've just recently learned from working with a friend of mine about how shaking releases trauma. And so as the earth is shaking, she's releasing trauma. And as we shake, animals shake, everyone shakes when they initially have trauma. And if we are allowed to shake, I have a friend that's doing a practice called a trauma release work, TRE, and which is a tool to help us move into shaking to release trauma. And it's just incredibly powerful. And so it just feels like that is what is going on. Well, that is a piece of the movement of this trauma, is the shaking of the earth, which allows us to shake too. And the north node of the moon is conjunct the sun and Venus, which is the way forward, and which is all about the love of the mother and trusting and understanding that, yes, we are going through some dark times. As Rick Tarnas said, we're going through the eye of the needle right now as Mother Earth is moving into higher dimensions, and we're moving with her. We need to release a lot of this dark stuff personally, collectively, and so things are coming to light that may be hard to deal with, and yet we need to deal with them and confront them head on, just like the Dark Mother. She is there. She holds us and she loves us. And it is a time of trusting we will move through this, but it takes courage, it takes self-honesty, it takes authenticity, and to really claim our personal authority and to release this old paradigm that no longer serves us. So anyway, so these are powerful times. I hope this was helpful, and wishing you all a great day.